Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Ernie Pantanco, your moderator, together with my co-chairs, Baste Quiñones and Atty. Bill Pamintuan, for today's general membership meeting of the MAP on ensuring the country's energy security. Please settle down comfortably. We will now begin our program. May I request everyone to pause and bow our heads for a short prayer to be followed by the Philippine national anthem.
Let us pray. Our most merciful God, we come to you in our weakness. We come to you in our fear. We come to you with trust, for you alone are our hope. We place before you the disease present in our world. We turn to you in our time of need. Bring wisdom to doctors. Give understanding to scientists. Endow caregivers with compassion and generosity. Bring healing to those who are ill. Protect those who are most at risk. Give comfort to those who have lost a loved one. Welcome those who have died into your eternal home. Stabilize our communities. Unite us in our compassion. Remove all fear from our hearts. Fill us with confidence in your care. We also pray for the eternal repose of the souls of MAP member Aniceto Nick Montanilla, President and CEO of iMetrics Asia Pacific Corporation, who passed away on July 23rd, 2021 at the age of 71, and MAP member Eduardo Ed Banaga, President of Design Ambience Incorporated, who died on August the 5th, 2021 at the age of 66. All this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Kayang magiging kasasinakanan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyag ka ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa nagatang tutok sa simoy at sa langit ng bagaw, ay ginatang tulad, awit sa paglayang minamahal, ang isang lang patawad mo'y tagumpay na naghihiling, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pang ay di maghihiling, luman ang araw ng buwan, ating pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo, ang hindi kaya ng pagkay mga amin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
May I now request the President of MAP, who is the Chair of Far Eastern University or FEU, Mr. Gigi Montinola, to deliver his welcome remarks.
Our main speaker, Senator Win GATCHALIAN, reactors, Attorney J. LAYUG, Attorney Ann Montelibano, and our very own MAP member, Attorney Ray Espinosa, distinguished guests from government, diplomatic circle, academia, and media, our Board of Governors, fellow MAP members, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On behalf of the MAP Board of Governors, I welcome all of you to this MAP General Membership Meeting on, quote, ensuring the country's energy security, unquote. Our MAP theme, the Great Reset, leading for the common good, continues to be a very relevant theme for all of us today at the MAP, particularly with the present hard lockdown and the quest of the country for herd immunity. We have been focusing on the following three priority programs: to safely reopen the economy, to promote shared prosperity and ESG, and to enhance members' benefits via best practice sharing. On safely reopening the economy, so far we have had a start-stop safely versus reopen the economy policy debate. Just when we thought we had green shoots with a 12% GDP rise in the second quarter, we've been stopped dead in our tracks with a preemptive enhanced community quarantine from August 6 to 20 in the NCR to prevent the spread of the Delta variant. We have a healthy health versus economy debate in our MAP community, but we've all rallied around the IATF's decision for a 2-week lockdown now. Our National Issues Committee has also actively participated in the national policy discussion by issuing various proactive and reactive statements on relevant current events. For ESG, last night, CNN and BBC for 20 minutes each, as well as the New York Times headlined a quote, "A hotter future is certain, our climate panel warns, but how hot is up to us," unquote. A United Nations report reports that we've crossed into tipping point status and that the world will become irreversibly hotter if governments do not work together now to prevent the spread of carbon dioxide from fossil fuels and to climb back to zero carbon emission by 2050. Vivid pictures and videos show intense fires in the US and Greece and unprecedented floods in Germany and China as Exhibit A. Today's general management meeting addresses the E and the S of the ESG parts of ESG. Through this GMM, we hope to be enlightened on ensuring the country's energy security. One side says we should follow the global ESG push of moving permanently towards renewable energy. Another side says we should focus on the poverty alleviation theme by allowing the continued use of the cheapest source of energy, which today is coal. Let's hear what our distinguished senator and the energy security specialists have to say on this matter. Given the pandemic, MAP practices its great reset, leading for the common good of affording its members with information sharing and thought-provoking general membership meetings and webinars. So far, thanks to our hyperactive committees and chairs, we have held 9 GMMs, 80 webinars, 18 of which have been organized by the MAP. Topics have been varied, ranging from hybrid workplace to our 5 crisis areas, health, economy, environment, education, and social justice, to arts and culture and sports. Other announcements. For your information, MAP has been very active in promoting voter registration and voter education for the upcoming May 2022 national elections. MAP has contributed 1 million in May 2021 to Election 2022 Coalition for its voter registration program that aims to convince 7 million young voters and deactivated voters to register by September 30, 2021. MAP has also contributed 1 million in July for the voter education program of the Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting through its chairperson, Myla Villanueva. Please support financially the Election 2020 Coalition and the PPRCV. Any amount will be welcome, but we suggest a 10,000 peso contribution per member. The MAP Secretariat will send out appropriate donation request details for those interested. We have a very full current and upcoming list of member events. Ongoing, we have an MAP Virtual Steps Challenge, walking exercise health program, where the proceeds will be split 50% for teacher training and 50% for MAP's other CSR programs. On August 18, we're going to have an MAP Arts and Culture lecture and virtual tour of quote heritage and ancestral homes in Bataan. Jovi Acusar herself will tell the story of how the family located, disassembled, and reassembled ancestral homes into their present location. August 25, a special MAP GMM in quote addressing the country's anti-hunger problem, featuring among others CABSEC Carlo Nograles. And this is coordinated with MAP's Social Justice Committee led by Chair Popoy Del Rosario. September 7, a joint MAP, PMAP, GMM on leapfrogging digital talent development. Again, this will be coordinated by the MAP Management and Human Capital Development Committee, chaired by Attorney Rico de Guzman. On September 14, we will have our signature MAP International CEO Conference from 9 p.m. to 5 p.m. with a thought-provoking and timely theme of, quote, hindsights, insights, foresights, the future in the present tense. Our perpetually capable MAP Conference Chair, Alma Jimenez, and Governor Fred Pascual will be spearheading this challenge. Many thanks in advance to our major sponsors, co-presenter First Philippine Holdings, premium sponsors BDO and SM Investments and GCash, knowledge partner Isla Lipana, and preferred partners AIA, Philam Life, Divina Law, Eon, PNA, Grant Thornton, and Stratcom. On September 28, we'll have a MAP webinar on, quote, the rise of challenger banks, BSP-approved digital banks, featuring BSP Governor Ben Diokno as the main speaker. So as you see, we will keep all of you quite busy depending on your interests. A few additional announcements. At this point, may I remind all MAP members that you have until August 20 to submit your nomination for the MAP Management Man of the Year 2021. Please help the MMY Search Committee chaired by Francis Lim and the MMY Judging Committee chaired by Ed Chua to produce the 45th recipient of the MAP Management Man of the Year Award. Another important announcement, may I also remind all MAP members to submit your 10 nominees for MAP governors for 2022-2023, not later than August 19. The first 10 members receiving the highest number of nominations and who will accept their nomination will be considered as candidates for the MAP governors for 2022-2023. From among the 10 candidates, 4 governors will be elected to serve on the MAP board for 2022 and 2023. The elected governors will also serve concurrently as trustees of the MAP Research and Development Foundation. On behalf of the MAP NOMELEC, chaired by Malu Cristobal, I urge you to make your voice heard. Please participate actively in the MAP's nomination and election process and submit your nominees for governors for 2022-2023. Looking forward, I urge you all to stay the course with our MAP 2021 theme of, quote, the Great Reset, leading for the common good, unquote. Our main missions have always been to safely reopen the economy, ESG, and member benefits. We also go back to addressing the 5 national crises we brought up in our January inaugural message. For health, we stress vaccinate, vaccinate, vaccinate during the ECQ and the rest of the second semester, ways to coexist with COVID-19 for a long time. For economy, we suggest counterbalancing the news with economic hardship statistics and suggest pragmatic solutions to reopening the economy. For environmental, we should support the global move towards ESG green investing, promoting renewable energy, and supporting the Philippines' participation in the COP conference in Glasgow in November. For education, please attend our second learning crisis GMM in October and consider the merits of advocating the return to face-to-face learning in 2022 for the mental well-being of our students. For social justice, please attend our anti-hunger GMM on August 25. Given the pandemic, please help where you can in whatever way you know how. Our thanks in advance to our main speaker and reactors for sharing their time with us today, and to the MAP Energy Committee chaired by Ernie Pantanco with able Vice Chairs Bill Pamintuan and Baste Quiñones. Finally, on a collective appreciation note, we wish to congratulate Team Philippines and all the athletes, coaches, national sports associations, and private sector sponsors who have made the best ever Philippine Olympic showing possible. We are also particularly appreciative that many of our own MAP members helped in various ways. You know who you are. Thank you, everyone, for your continuing support to the MAP. And please stay with us through our various communication channels such as email, Viber, electronic newsletter, MAP Memo, the MAP Facebook, and our LinkedIn account for regular updates on MAP's programs and activities. Mabuhay kayong lahat. Thank you.
Thank you, President Gigi, for that very comprehensive welcome remark. Now for the new MAP members for our online induction today, I would like to call on the chair of the MAP Membership Committee, a legal luminary who is also the Senior Legal Counsel of ACRA Law, Attorney Francis Lim.
Thank you very much, Bill. Fellow members and guests, I have the honor to announce that this afternoon, we're inducting 6 new MAP members who will increase our total membership from 1,056 to 1,062. May I now read the names of our inductees. Number 1, Mr. Roderick Rick M. Danao, Chair and Senior Partner of PW Philippines, line of business, auditing, tax, transactions, and advisory services. Sponsors are yours truly and Ms. Risa Mantaring. Our second inductee is Mr. Rafael Rafa Fernandez de Besa, First Vice President for the Industrial and Commercial Business Units, Aboitiz Infra Capital, line of business, investments, and infrastructure. Sponsors are Ms. Jose B. Canilao and Mr. Romy L. Bernardo. Our third inductee is Attorney Maria Lourdes Malulim, Vice Chair and Tax Planning Partner of PwC Philippines, line of business, same as Mr. Rick, auditing, tax, transactions, and advisory services. Sponsors are yours truly and Ms. Risa Mantaring. Number 4, Mr. Roberto Cerbo R. Locsin, Chief Administrative Officer of the Manila Water Company, line of business, utilities. Sponsors are yours truly and Ms. Risa Mantaring. Number 5, Mr. Oliver Mark Oli Riches, Managing Director, and Michael Page, Indonesia, Philippines, line of business, professional recruitment services. Sponsors are myself and Ms. Rina Mantaring. Next is Mr. William Thomas F. Mirsol, President and COO, Federal Land Inc., line of business, property development and management. Sponsors are myself and Risa Mantaring. Oli, I already mentioned. And last but not the least, I have in my list is Miss Elizabeth Lisa C. Timbon, CFO and SPP of Guagua Rural Bank, line of business, banking. Sponsors are Mr. Alfredo Pascual and myself. Arnold, have I missed anybody? No. At this point, I would like to call our MAP President, Gigi Montinola, to lead the online induction of our new members.
Yes, incoming members, please raise your right hand. Please repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Roderick.
I,
Roberto Lawson.
Do hereby solemnly
Malulim,
pledge
do hereby
hereby
solemnly pledge
that I will perform well and faithfully
that I will perform well and faithfully
to the best of my ability
to the best of my ability
my duties as a regular member
duties as a regular member
in order to contribute
in order to contribute
to the achievement of the objectives
to the achievement of and objectives
of the Management Association of the Philippines.
of the Management Association of the Philippines.
So help me God.
So please help me God.
Congratulations and welcome to the MAP. I think you picked the
Thank
best.
you.
Thank you. Of course, we're
Thank
biased,
you.
but I think you picked the best management organization in the Philippines.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, President Gigi and Attorney Francis. Congratulations to our new members. Let's all welcome our new MAP members. Before we start with the presentation of the main speaker and reactors, please watch the following infographics on the power industry, which was developed by Rappler. The MAP Energy Committee is now working on an updated infographics which aims to orient everyone on the key issues surrounding the power industry. Arnold, could you please show the video?
Filipino consumers pay the highest electricity rates in Asia. Why? We paid an average of 9 pesos and 14 cents per kilowatt hour a month in 2011, or about 25 cents in 2012, more expensive than Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, and even industrialized Japan. The electricity bill reflects the following. The power plants that process energy from sources like coal and fuel turn them into electricity that lights up our homes, street lights, powers our gadgets, and keeps our factories going. These generation charges account for over half of the bill. Then the cost of transporting the electricity, still in its high voltage form, from the power plants through transmission towers to the power distributors is reflected in the transmission charges. Distributors charge for bringing power already reduced to 220 volts to us, users. Systems losses refer to the electricity wasted because they were lost in transmission or were pilfered. Universal charges are various costs passed on to consumers. And subsidies are the discounts given to senior citizens and lifeline consumers who are using less than 100 kilowatt a month. Then, of course, government taxes. All these are moving parts. They go up or down, and usually they go up. The bill is high because some costs of operations increased. For example, almost half of our energy sources are coal and oil, mostly imported from the Middle East. But these are capital-intensive businesses that also have to recover through profits. To encourage investments, the government guarantees their margin. When companies import, the foreign exchange fluctuations may be expensive and eat into their guaranteed profits. They can recover through the ICIRA, or incremental currency exchange rate adjustment mechanism. The power plants, formerly owned by state-owned Napocor, can also recover profits. If their purchase power and fuel costs eat into these guaranteed margins, we feel these via GRAM, or Generation Rate Adjustment Mechanism, which increases the generation charges. The same for state-owned transmission company or Transco. If the cost of transporting high-voltage power to retailers pull down their assured profits of 15%, they can recover through TRAM, or Transmission Rate Adjustment Mechanism. And Napocor, which is left with bringing light to far-flung areas or islands, also pass on the cost of SPUG, or Small Power Utilities Group, most of them using expensive diesel. These are added to our bill through universal charges. And because they are public utilities, what goes up and down in our electric bill required approval of the Energy Regulatory Commission. In the past, the state-owned Napocor was inefficient. In the 1990s, Rolling blackouts prompted government to promise investors it will buy all the supply generated by the independent power producers. When the Asian financial crisis struck in 1997-98, demand slowed down but consumers still paid for the excess supply. Worse, in 2002, the government did not let Napocor, which had incurred a lot of debts, charge higher fees. This resulted in Napocor's massive losses that we are now paying for. The Electric Power Industry Reform Act, or EPIRA, was introduced in 2001 to address the sins of the past. The new law broke apart Napocor's monopoly of generation and transmission businesses. Through Power Sector Assets and Liabilities Management Corp, or PISAM, the state-owned power plants were sold to private investors. The transmission service was sold to a Filipino-Chinese consortium called National Grid Corporation of the Philippines, or NGCP. The debts of Napocor, amounting to $6.5 billion in 2001, were partly assumed by national government, and the rest are charged to our bill over time. This is reflected in the universal charges. PISAM, while it was supposed to earn revenues from the privatized power plants, incurred debts because it was not able to immediately sell some of them. So it had to maintain these aging plants. PISAM will recover these debts, worth about 130 billion pesos, via universal charges. NGCP, on the other hand, are recovering some of Napocor's debts before the transmission assets were turned over through TRAM. These profit-related reasons and sins of the past are passed on to us, consumers, and are tucked into the electricity bill. Another item that you will soon find in there is the feed-in tariff. This is to encourage investors to tap renewable sources like geothermal, hydro, wind, solar, biomass, and run-of-river energy. Because these are from indigenous sources, they could eventually reduce electricity prices. These are not dependent on coal and oil imports, which are vulnerable to foreign exchange volatility. But what should really drive electricity prices down are market forces. The EPIRA created the WESM, or the Wholesale Electricity Spot Market. It is where power producers sell their electricity units and customers buy at a price they want. These systems the EPIRA promised were supposed to be in place in 2011. However, there are still few generation players, and those who have built new power plants are not generating enough electricity to make trading at WESM a truly competitive and thriving one. Buyers are not yet bidding for the lowest price, but for available supply. When there are more new power projects and the private sector will stake more capital in them, then the electricity bill will soon be lowered. Lala Rimando, Rappler, Manila.
Please take.
Thank you, Arnold.
Yeah.
We hope that you find the Rappler infographics
You're muted, Ernie.
I think the connection of Ernie is maybe hung. No? Anyway, please take note that the MAP Energy Committee will be updating some of the inaccuracies or those overtaken by events in the video, like the following, which was noted in the chat of some of our participants today. The generation sector is a competitive sector.
Arnold, am I online again?
Oh, go ahead, Ernie. I was.
Oh, thank you, Bill. There was a stable internet. Anyway, were you able to read the inaccurate?
Yes.
So we will be updating the video. Go ahead, Bill.
Yes, and the generation sector is not a public utility, and it is lumped with the rest. No? On WESM, there are players already, and they are generating enough. What makes it competitive is when we allow the market to behave on its own without punitive and prohibitive regulations. So we will be updating the video as what you have just seen, and we will again show it to the membership, general membership. Thank you. Now, some reminders before we start the presentation of our main speaker and reactors. As participants for this GMM, you are automatically muted and your camera or video is switched off. You may submit your questions through the Q&A box that you see on your screen. With the assistance of our MAP Secretariat, we will read the questions on your behalf. For your information, you will be able to see the speakers and reactors, but you will not be able to view the other participants. Thank you.
Moving forward, in line with MAP policy and in the interest of time, we will dispense with the lengthy introduction of our main speaker and reactors. I would like to remind our main speaker that he's given 30 minutes for this presentation and the reactors are given 5 minutes each. May I now call on our main speaker. Please welcome the Chair of the Senate Committee on Energy, Honorable Senator Sherwin Gatchalian. Welcome, Senator Win.
Thank you, Ernie, for the acknowledgement. Let me know if I freeze or my voice becomes robotic. I think I have some issues with my internet connection, but just flag me whenever I cannot be heard or I freeze, my video freezes. So let me greet our dignitaries for this afternoon. Let me greet our President, President Montinola. Let me also greet Mr. Emmanuel Bonoan. Let me also greet, of course, Ernie Pantanco. And let me thank MAP for generously lending Ernie to the Senate Committee on Energy. He's a mainstay there. In fact, we will give him probably a chair in the Senate for being present all the time. May isang upuan ka na doon, Ernie. Let me also greet Attorney William Pamintuan. Let me also greet Mr. Sebastian Quinones. Of course, to all the MAP board and officers. Let me also greet our panelists and reactors. Attorney Ray Espinosa of Meralco. Let me also greet Attorney J. LAYUG, another Suki of the Energy Committee. And let me also greet Attorney Ann Montelibano, another Suki also. These guys will have their own respective chairs and tables in the Senate for being present all the time. So once again, thank you very much for inviting me to this very important event talking about energy security. I think this was an offshoot of the brownouts that we experienced late May. But I would like to talk about broader terms, not focusing on the brownouts. The brownouts are quick disruptions in our grid, but let me talk about the long-term issues and what we should do and focus on in terms of assuring our country of energy security. And with that, let me share my slide. So this is the topic that was given to me, energy security, and I'd like to make this as, I think my video disappeared. Let me just reset. There. And let me make this as simple, as easy to remember as possible by reducing it to 7 ways of achieving energy security. And I will not go into the technical details of that. It will take me probably 2 or 3 days to go into the details, but these are just snapshots of things that the country should look at in order to assure our generation and the future generation of energy security. So just to give context, our demand has been growing on the average of 3.9%. And this is taking into consideration the 2020 pandemic, which we also reduced demand tremendously. This is already pandemic adjusted growth rates. But before the pandemic, we were actually growing around 4% to 5%. And looking at the latest Philippine Energy Plan, demand will grow around 6% till 2040. That's quite fast. This is coupled with our GDP growth. And in the latest PEP, you can see that we will need approximately 71,000 megawatts of capacity. And a larger part of that will come from RE. And this is a good sign because the DOE is already recognizing RE as a major source of energy. And thanks to Jay, who's been a very vocal advocate of RE. So finally, Jay, you've been heard, and it's now incorporated in the PEP. But we have to make sure that this gets implemented because we all know that the devil is in the implementation. But having said that, we're still far off comparing with other countries in terms of per capita consumption. So I want to show this slide to show everyone that we're still quite far from the other industrialized nations, and the potential is there. So I believe that after the pandemic, if everything goes well in terms of recovery, the goal here is to consume efficiently, moving towards a lot of the industrialized nations. So this is the potential, basically, and we're far off from the per capita consumption of industrialized nations. So basically, I divided the solutions to achieving energy security into 7 ways. And number 1, the most simple, is additional supply. But this is easier said than done. Red tape remains to be the biggest barrier to entry. And we also need to make sure that new supply and are compliant with price discovery through competitive selection process. So number 1, we have to reduce red tape or eliminate red tape. And then second, we have to make sure that it's the competitive selection process is practiced strictly to make sure that price discovery is being implemented. And third is to move into other markets. And this has been a talk lately during the issues with brownout. And we've heard from the DOE that they have compelled the transmission operator, NGCP, to contract reserves on a firm basis. Our view, this is short term, but in the long term, we have to already launch the different markets within our wholesale electricity market mechanism. So meaning we can buy reserves through the market, we can buy forward reserves through the market. Our WESM is capable of doing that, and we really need to move into much more sophisticated markets in order to assure new supply of coming in. So just to give you a snapshot, this actually came from DOE. Just recent, actually, I just got this late last night to confirm. But just to give you an idea on how difficult it is to get your permits to build a power plant. This is for hydropower. This is to get your permit to build for a hydropower plant. It takes, prior to the EVOS law, it takes about 1,876 calendar days to get your permit. That's close to about 5 years for a hydropower plant to get your permit. You have to undergo 359 signatures, undergo 74 regulatory agencies and bureaus, navigate through 20 different laws, and finally sign 43 different contracts and certifications and licenses. So this is basically what a hydropower plant operator needs to go through. We enacted EVOS, the Energy Virtual One-Stop Shop, again, courtesy of the industry. We managed to reduce the calendar days, but if you look at the agencies and the different laws, they stay the same. And this is actually my point. We enacted this Energy Virtual One-Stop Shop to reduce barriers and to reduce the complications of getting your permit, but obviously it's not happening. And one of our directives or our recommendations to the DOEs to fully implement the EVOS law, because it gives them a lot of powers to break down barriers. Oops. And because of that, because of red tape, we've seen a lot of power plants delayed. No? Almost 71% of the power plants with the commercial date operations for this year has been delayed over the past years. So this is one root cause why we have brownouts. Obviously, if the supply will not come in on time, you'll have problems with injecting new power in the grid. So the majority of our power plants are already delayed. The next is diversification of energy supply. Number one, primarily using renewable energy as the new source. And there's also a lesser known diversification process or diversification technology, and this is biofuels. We have to promote biofuels and use it widely for our liquid fuel. Another is to use new technologies such as LNG, hydrogen, and even electric vehicles to reduce importation of petroleum. So again, a snapshot. This is from data coming from DOE. We have 31,000 megawatts of potential capacity from RE. This is enough to power half of our requirement come 2040. So if we maximize the 31,000 megawatts, we don't need to import coal, we don't need to import natural gas. Just by using our natural resource, we can power half of our economy or half of our requirement. We already approved on third reading the country's first Electric Vehicles and Charging Stations Act, and the goal of this law is to promote electric vehicles by making sure that the infrastructure is in place. Another bill that we are now in the midst of debating is the Midstream Natural Gas Industry Development Act, in which Ernie was very active in crafting this bill. He was actually present in all of our technical working groups. And this bill aims to promote the importation of natural gas in an event when Malampaya runs out. Third is to aggressively explore. We haven't been exploring our natural resource in terms of oil and gas. And again, this data came from the DOE in the data that they submitted to us. We have enough oil to supply the country's needs for 36 years. And we have enough gas to supply the country's need for 96 years, because we only use a fraction of our gas. Right now, we only have Malampaya and the natural gas plants that actually uses Malampaya. So we have a lot of reserves to power our economy for years and generations to come. Unfortunately, in terms of drilling, we're not drilling enough. If you look at, if you compare Thailand and Indonesia, they're drilling much more than the Philippines. In the past 10 years, we only drilled about 3 wells. That's why we only discovered the Malampaya. So activities in terms of oil and gas is not it's not active. We have a proposal to refocus the PNOC or the Philippine National Oil Company into a purely oil and gas company. Right now, PNOC can go into anything. Actually, if you remember, it even went into biofuels by planting Jatropha, but nothing happened out of that. So I filed a bill to refocus PNOC into a pure oil and gas company focusing on drilling and exploration for oil and gas. The fourth one is accountability in the transmission projects. And this is very important. Without transmission, how can we transmit power from different parts of the country to the load centers? And this is a very important aspect of our electric power industry. And unfortunately, a lot of the projects that we need in order to transmit power is delayed. 24% of the projects under the third regulatory period is delayed. We might say that this is a minority, but some of these projects are very important. For example, the Visayas-Mindanao interconnection, which is very important to bring excess power from Mindanao to Visayas and Luzon. But if you look at the other projects outside of the third regulatory reset, majority are already delayed and still ongoing, almost 94%. So without transmission, forget your power. It's important that transmission is already there before power plants can even build. These are just some of the projects that are delayed. And I mentioned earlier, one of the most critical projects is the Visayas Mindanao interconnection. Right now, there's surplus of power in Mindanao, but we cannot bring it to Luzon because there's no interconnection. And these are just the list of projects that are delayed. Some of them are very important. For example, the Cebu-Negros Panay project, which is important to bring vast amounts of RE to other islands. We all know that Negros has a surplus in RE, but they cannot bring them to the other islands because of the undercapacity issues. We also need to make sure that there's efficiency and accountability in power generation. You might say that power generation is already regulated, but we believe that even though it's a deregulated sector of the power sector, it needs to be accountable and it needs to make sure that it's performing up to par. So in our most recent hearing, there are about 35 power plants which fell below the reliability index that was promulgated by ERC. And the reliability index is the index that power plants need to follow in terms of performance. And 35% were issued notices. In terms of following the schedules of outages, as we can see, almost 30% of the plants, or almost 9 plants, didn't follow their own schedule. It's important that in the power sector, planning is very important. And planning for outages is a very important activity. And you have to follow it. You don't have to just plan, but you need to make sure that you follow your own plans. And we also detected that some of the plants, power plants, didn't follow their own plans. Fourth is synergy and accountability in planning. As we all know, in the slide earlier, the whole electric power industry is under the hands of the private sector, and government is just there to promulgate policies and regulate the monopolistic parts of the electric power industry. So it's important to plan. It's important to plan ahead. And given the red tape and the very long process of getting your permit, you need to plan way ahead. If it takes about 4 to 5 years to get your permit and another 2 years to build your plant, that's about 7 years. So if you need new power now, you have to make sure that you have already applied and constructed 7 years ago. That's how long planning is critical in the electric power industry. And these are just some of the plans the different facets of the sector needs to undertake. It's important that these plans are monitored and executed by both the proponents and also government. The electric power industry, I always compare it to professional basketball, wherein the commissioners promulgate the policy or the rules, and then ERC enforces the rules. In the same manner, in electric power, DOE promulgates the policy that all of these actors need to follow, including promulgating their own plans, and ERC enforces those plans. So planning is important, and enforcing the plans are also very critical. And lastly, and this law is actually not being talked about a lot, no, but we need to fully implement the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act. This is probably a lesser sexy aspect of electric power, but nevertheless, a megawatt save is a megawatt produced. And we already enacted RA 11285, or the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act. In fairness to the Department of Energy, they started implementing this January of last year, and even through the pandemic, they've managed to implement some of the important provisions of the law. However, out of the 39 provisions in the law, half of it is still not implemented. And again, this law is very important because it promotes energy efficiency by mandating certain consumption level for commercial and industrial corporations, and it gives DOE a lot of power again, to implement efficiency and conservation in businesses. So we're again urging DOE to fully implement this, because if we can save, then that's already tantamount to producing new electricity. So those are the 7 ways that we have identified to ensure this generation and the next generation of energy security. And it's important that we put this in play right now. A lot of them are medium to long term in terms of execution, and it's very difficult to rev up the economy without making sure that we have steady flow of electricity to our homes and to our businesses. But then again, the bottom line here, it's important that government, through its arm, Department of Energy, to focus and to devote a lot of time in terms of executing those 7 ways. A lot of them needs a lot of concentration and determination. For example, drilling, and then it cannot be those 7 ways cannot be managed by arm's length. It's important that the department focuses on those 7 ways to assure us of energy security. So with that, thank you very much for the invitation. And again, thank you very much for your time.
Senator Win, thank you very much. That was a very comprehensive presentation. I'm sure that there's already questions that are coming our way, but let's go first to our reactors. Our very first reactor is the President and CEO of MERALCO, who is also a member of MAP. Let's all welcome Attorney Ray Espinosa. Attorney Ray, over to you.
Thank you, Baste, and good afternoon to the Honorable Senator Win. That was a very comprehensive presentation indeed. My first reaction is in the context of energy security and electricity prices. From your position as the chairman of the Energy Committee of the Senate, what, in your view, would be the best way forward in terms of veering away from coal fuel plants to non-coal fuel plants, given that there is the ban that has been imposed by the DOE on new coal plant capacity, and also the world is turning away from coal fuel fired plants, and the pressures are being brought to bear on distribution companies and generation companies by banks, lenders, insurance companies, market, etc., in terms of their remaining coal plant capacities. I think the fuel mix is something that needs addressing for us to attain energy security, even without coal, which is a baseload fuel capacity, as we all know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray, for that. Well, after DOE made that pronouncement of implementing a moratorium on new coal-fired power plants, we actually asked for the details on how to execute it. Unfortunately, we were not supplied with those details because it's easy to pronounce, no? But of course, there are a lot of technicalities that are intertwined with one another. For example, stranded contracts.
Yes.
For example, another one is what technology can we use to replace it?
Correct.
What is the price impact to our consumers? So all of these things need to be enlightened. And unfortunately, we haven't received anything after the pronouncement yet. No? But definitely, we welcome the pronouncement. But again, no, the devil is in the details. So just to answer your question straight, Ray, I always believe in a well-studied transition. And I acknowledge that the whole world is moving into that transition, that energy transition into cleaner and more sustainable energy source. But the Philippines is unique, no, in its own setting. Our consumers are very price sensitive. Our technologies are limited. Then you have red tape and all that. So it's very important that we have our own energy transition that we study and research very carefully. We funded DOE to come up with that transition. I believe that they're doing that right now. But I don't believe in shutting off coal plants tomorrow and expect everything will be all right. We need to have that transition. We need to have that transition, and that transition should be studied carefully. Whether how long or how short, that remains to be studied carefully. But I do believe and I do support that that transition should already start, and the whole world is already doing that.
Well, thank you for that great response, Senator Win. And I do share your view that we have to map out a just transition for the Philippines that caters to its unique requirements as a developing country, and given the price sensitivity of our customers actually to electricity prices. And it's not going to be easy, but it's something that both the private sector and government should work on together. There is obviously on our part no intention to prolong our reliance on coal-fired plants, but at the same time we must balance this with the needs of our country in terms of energy security, given that these plants provide base load capacity. So hopefully with the partnership with government and the private sector, we can forge a framework for that just and orderly transition out of coal-fired plants into a more sustainable energy security arrangement. Thank you.
I think you hit the right word, Ray, orderly. What we don't want is a disordered transition, and that can lead to a lot of problems, especially for businesses, because they're waiting to rev up hopefully after probably next year after the pandemic. So, but I do agree that we need to start the ball rolling by doing a lot of research and engaging experts in how do we have that Philippine style transition.
Thank you, Senator Will.
Thank you, Senator Win and Boss Ray, for that reaction and the response. For our second reactor, I call on the President of the Philippine Developers of Renewable Energy for Advancement, Inc., or DREAM, Attorney J. LAYUG.
Thank you, Bill. Can I just share my slides? Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for MAP, of course, for the invite. I'm not going to mention everybody, but of course, regards to Senator Win, my once upon a time boss, Ray ESPINOSA, my colleagues, of course, Baste and Ernie in my life before as part of the Malampaya Consortium, to, of course, Gigi, and of course, a shout out to my sister who I haven't seen since COVID. She's watching now, Jin Bigo. She's here. Anyway, I'd like to supplement what already Senator Win said and provide some context, no? Additional context to what he had discussed already. Now, very quickly, if we look at the market in the Philippines, and I'd like to share you this slide. This data came from the DOE. I always say, Houston, we have a problem with this data. When I was in government in 2010, you will note there that we had the highest utilization both for generation and installed capacity for renewables. And then suddenly, after 10 years, we reversed the trend. The installed capacity for renewables went down, and coal installation went up, and on the generation side, it's even worse. No? Once upon a time, we reached 32% of renewables generation, and now down to 20.8%. When in fact, in 2011, we launched the National Renewable Energy Program, where we said we will install 35% in the energy mix coming from renewables. We went the opposite way, quite ironically. And remember, we also implemented back then the net metering and the feed-in tariff system. So this is where we are now, unfortunately. And as a result of relying more on coal and oil and conventional fuel, we have also reversed the trend in self-sufficiency. Where once upon a time, we were at 65% energy self-sufficient because we were relying more on our energy resources. We are now down to 46%. Why is this a big problem? If suddenly the likes of Indonesia prohibit us from importing coal, what will happen to the Philippines when we are reliant now on coal to almost 50% of our energy needs? So this is not good data to see, not only for us, but for future generations as well. How about supply and demand outlook? And this is, again, I've repeated this many times. I'll only say that COVID was good one time in terms of energy. Why? Because demand was suppressed, as earlier discussed with Bill. And because demand was suppressed, thankfully, because we had little supply, or dependable supply to address that, demand went down by 21% initially and ultimately down to 17%. But now that we're slowly going back for a while to regular programming, we saw that on May 14, in fact, this year, our actual peak demand hit 15,000 megawatts. And what's worse, of course, supply went down. This is also the outlook. This was already presented by Senator Win, the outlook of the DOE, an average of about 4%. Now, over time, people have asked whether the laws have worked. Yes, they have worked, particularly the liberalization of the electric power industry. Government is no longer in power generation, and it should stay that way. Let the private sector do it. Next, what has happened over time for the last 20 years? There are now many generators, big and small. In fact, there are more small generators in the renewable energy sector. And because of renewables, particularly the FIT system, Western prices went down. As of September 2020, we were already saving 40 billion pesos, or about 7 centavos per kilowatt hour, to all consumers because we put in renewable energy in the system. And they have the must dispatch priority or priority dispatch in the system. They were able to dispense with the more expensive conventional fuel. Competition has also driven down generation charges. I'm trying to put more context and actually update the Rappler video in this particular instance. And what's interesting, of course, and more positive, I guess, the private sector, notwithstanding whatever happens in government, for a time we saw there were issues at the ERC, and then issues at the DOE. The private sector went ahead and continued to drive the power sector. And now, as we now currently see, there's more power to the consumers. With the green energy option, all consumers now with at least 100 kilowatt can buy their power directly from the renewable energy suppliers. What has also happened over time? we were able to widen the base of generator ownership in the Philippines. Once upon a time, it's all government, about 90%. Now look at this data. Now you have so many generators in play, and that's good only for the consumers because they will now compete, no? Unlike what you saw in the Rappler video. At the same time, I want to highlight as well this HHI index. No? This is an indication or a measure of market concentration. No? Data will show you, because of all these generators in place, no, our market is has a lot of players. No, there's no over concentration. In fact, it's been widely distributed among different players in the industry. And that only speaks well, of course, good for the consumers. No? But this is the most alarming data that you will see. This data came from PEMC, the Philippine Electricity Market Corporation. We've been discussing, debating whether we have enough supply. No need to look far. I looked at the data of government, or call it pseudo-government, PEMC. This is 2019 data. In fact, PEMC itself sounded the alarm. In 2019, there was an average outage of 2,637 megawatts unforced or forced unplanned outages. That already tells all of us, Houston, we have a problem. We need to build more capacities. No? And this data is not also helped by more data showing that, for example, in 2019, roughly 69% of the market intervention, about 47 intervals, was the result of insufficiency of supply. Now, again, this data did not come from me, but from PEMC. This was their market report. No? And you will see also in the PEMC report that there is an inverse relationship wherein an increasing level of supply margin would correspond to a lower resulting price. We all know that. Simple Keynes economic theory, right? More supply, lower price. All these, again, are data that government has. No? But what's more alarming, if I look again at that report, based on 154 power plants with 0 to 20 years of age, they constitute about 13,000 megawatts, and that's 65% of the total WESM registered capacity as of 2019. What's even worse, those generators beyond 20 years of life already constitute 35% of total registered capacity. Eh kaya naman ho nagbabag down na, hindi ba? We have a problem. Our power plants are aging and we are not building fast enough. And again, just to sound off this problem, we need to build more capacity. So going back, again, EPIRA has also helped us lower the price. The Rappler video earlier said the prices have not come down. That's not true as of today. No, in fact, because of the FIT plants, we were able to reduce the price. Now, thanks to RE. And you will see now the generation rates, both of MERALCO, of WESM, and NPC, they're all down. Why? Because there are more generators. Right now, if you contract power supply agreements from renewables, solar now is going at 350. No? We don't even need to talk about high prices, no? Because renewables can now offer really low prices. In fact, they're all competing, no, for these lower prices. So EPIRA definitely has worked for us, no? But is there room for improvement? Yes. And I'll keep it simple. No? Generation, we need more supply. Transmission, we need more infrastructure. Distribution, we need more lines. Supply, we need more supply. I don't need to go and go into the details. But then again, this data would only show that if we have more supply, prices would be lower. No? I fear for the Malampaya shutdown that is coming very soon. No? And we all know Malampaya now constitutes about 3,500 megawatts in the system. If it's down, then what do we replace it with? No? But more importantly, in the future, no? What we need to do to address all these challenges, number one, let's make sure that our government regulations are not too restrictive. In fact, we thank Senator Win for all his efforts. We have EVOS finally online. And how timely is it? No? In fact, if EVOS were implemented much earlier before COVID, it probably would work much faster now. Number two, there's too much rigidity, no, in the process for entering into offtake agreements. Let's keep it simple. Let's make it easier for the utilities. The DOE anyway is there. No? Let them monitor if in fact there is abuse. Too many permits and license. No? I saw in the table of Senator Win, the once upon a time 200 signatures are now up to 300 plus. No? They keep increasing. No? And finally, we need to have more integrated government support. Let all government agencies come together to make sure that we build more capacities and lower the price in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay, for that very comprehensive presentation. And now I call on the president of the Philippine Independent Power Producers Association, or PIPPA, Attorney Anne Montelibano. Anne?
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gents. Good afternoon, Senator Win, and good afternoon to my fellow panelists, Attorneys Espinosa and LAYUG. I'll keep it brief within the 5 minutes allotment. We will just react to the presentation of the Honorable Senator. Generally, PIPPA agrees with everything. The presentation of Senator Win hit it on the spot. It was right on the spot. We support and agree. I made some notes. We support and agree with the removal of red tape. We welcome the EVOS, but we would like to see the signatures further decreased and the timelines become more efficient and lessen also, because as you know, permitting takes a long time and it discourages investors and makes, from the generation side, it discourages us from putting more plants. So we'd like to see the EVOS roll out properly and become more efficient as time goes by. With regard to barriers to entry as well, we thoroughly support that, and we have been repeating that over and over again. We would like to see to lessen the barriers, or actually to remove it completely. We would like to see achievable policies and regulations. This means that, for example, consistent interpretation with the EPIRA with regard to the public offering issue. The secondary price caps, they have to be investor friendly, and it cannot encourage inefficient plants or inefficient firms. It has to encourage contracting as well. So those things are barriers to entry. We agree on the diversification because we embrace new technology. This means if we embrace new technologies, this means new players will come into the system, which will result to competitiveness, and we are all about competitiveness. Thirdly, we also agree on aggressive exploration. However, do note, ladies and gentlemen, that exploration comes with a price. It's high risk and it's very expensive. Therefore, it has to be balanced with proper policies and regulations that, again, will make it investor friendly. Then again, yes to accountability on transmission projects. We all have our roles to play. We generators are tasked to maintain our plants and to provide new capacity. Our DUs are tasked to contract and get replacement power. Our transmission operator are required to ensure that there are enough reserves and to actually construct transmission lines. Because again, as the good senator said, there is no use for a lot of plants being built if we cannot operate and throw the energy to the system. So this is why the transmission network is very, very important. On the reliability index, however, we agree, yes, that there should be a sort of a reliability standard. However, as we've said, and I know that the Honorable Senator is familiar with this, what we request for is just reasonable and achievable standards. Presently, our standards are very, very, very high, and even higher than our American counterparts. And if you look at the data, our Philippine plants, with the exception of Malaya, are performing at par with our NERC counterparts, that's our American counterparts. So what we need right now are achievable standards. In a way, if you put achievable standards and that is consistent with the technology of the plant, you will lessen forced outages because you're able to maintain properly in accordance with what the plant needs. To shorten it unreasonably, which is, for example, for plant outages, you increase mechanical issues. You increase the probability that the plant will go on forced outage. So what we have been requesting is to allow for a reasonable and achievable planned outage maintenance days. So for also, and just as an explanation, because obviously the slide earlier was very alarming in terms of forced outages and plants exceeding the number of planned outages. What we're currently in a pandemic. Right now we are in ACQ and we're still encountering difficulty. What our generators are trying right now is to mitigate it and make the best out of the situation. These numbers are extraordinary and it has been magnified all because of the pandemic, and we are currently feeling it and experiencing it right now. So there has to be a grain of salt when you take a look at the planned and forced outages. However, in closing, we have to take a look in terms of outages and shortage of supply. You have to go to the root cause of the problem. Why are there shortages? Shortages, what we have been saying in PIPPA for years and years now, is that we always rely on excesses in the system. And that is already very dangerous. There is no effective planning or identification of the gap that we have to fill. So we have been espousing a complete study on the loss of load expectation versus your volume of loss of load, which is the economic price we pay for a blackout or a brownout. We have to identify that. If we properly identify that, then we know the price we are willing to pay for energy security and stability. Not only that, we also know what kind of policies we need to craft in order to entice investors. Remember that investors are security or contracts. Right now, less than, I think only 50%, I'm not so sure of the numbers, but the current contracting capacity is not even fulfilled. So why the DUs need to be encouraged to contract, and contracts act as our security blanket that we can operate and be financially and economically viable. So those are one of the things. The CSP mechanism is fabulous. I mean, it's really, really good. It encourages to be competitive. It encourages us generators to be competitive. But what we need right now is to identify first, what gap do we need to fill? And then that's when we know what kind of capacity we need to entice and what rules and regulations are needed to address that gap. We can't do band-aid solutions anymore. And to be honest, there are a lot of markets and mechanisms already in place, or at least will be implemented in the near future. For example, the renewable energy market, we look forward to that. We're going to have a green energy auction program, which is one of the things that I personally look forward to as well. And then I'm sure that the good senator is also considering a forwards or derivatives market, because we have talked about it before. So those things, it's quite an exciting period for the energy industry. As long as we can properly implement it and put it in place, then it should be fine. What I want to really emphasize on is, if you tighten the reins on your investors and your generators, then it makes investing really, really hard also to keep on being operational and being economically viable. Let's allow the deregulated market to compete effectively. And that's when you see how the market forces will really work. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney Ann, for your comments. And I totally agree with you that the presentation of Senator Win was very comprehensive and provided a global analysis of the different areas of the power industry. Plus, in addition, some specific recommendations of what each major component can do in terms of solving or assuring stability of our supply. At this point, we will now go to the question and answer question. As we mentioned before, please submit your questions through the Q&A box. There are already several questions. At this point in time, I will call on my co-moderators, Bill and Bastet, to help me with the Q&A. But let me start with two questions for the Honorable Senator that were asked in our previous Committee on Energy meetings. The first one, Mr. Senator, is that do you believe EPIRA is still the right framework to satisfy the energy trilemma of energy security, equity, and environment sustainability? Or should there be amendments to EPIRA? In particular, there is now, which was mentioned in the last hearing, a move for government to go back to participate in generation. What are your thoughts on this, Mr. Senator, as my first question? The second question, what help can MAP extend to the Senate committee in order to assist your initiatives? Thank you very much, Mr. Senator.
Well, for the first question, I think Jay answered that in great detail earlier, no? That EPIRA is working in a sense that government is not shelling out a single centavo to produce electricity, but it has to perform. Government itself needs to make sure that it's performing its policy-making role as well as regulatory role. These twin roles are very important to, as what Ray said, no? To have order in the sector. So the policy actually is the tool that will enable the sector to future-proof itself. For example, RE, natural gas, even hydrogen in the future. These are policies that should be promulgated later on as the industry develops. But in terms of achieving order, regulation and the regulator should also perform. Without the regulator, it will be chaotic in the sector. And just like any other industry, without rules, it's very chaotic. And we don't want an industry wherein there is a lot of friction and the consumers are left holding the bag. So, but we have a few items that we want to tweak in order to, for example, make EPIRA up to date. I talked about this to Attorney Ann. For example, the IPO requirement for generators. In my view, this is already obsolete. There's enough competition in the generating side of electric power that you don't need to mandate them to go IPO. And besides, Jay is right. No? How can you mandate a 1 megawatt runoff river to go IPO? That's crazy. So we filed a bill to reduce that requirement and other little tweaking that we need to do, no, in order to make EPIRA up to date. In terms of assistance from MAP, the presence of course you, Ernie, and Baste, and also Bill is a very good way to assist the Energy Committee. You bring in the management and the business perspective. It's also not healthy just to talk to regulators, to policymakers, and the players. Because at the end of the spectrum are the consumers and the businesses. And you bring that perspective. You keep us close to the ground, so to speak. So by making your voice louder through the committee and through the technical working group, there's a lot of help for the committee in terms of exercising its oversight function and as well as legislative functions.
Thank you, Mr. Senator. Call now on my co-moderators, Basta and Bill, to ask your questions. Or
Let me go first. Looking at the range of comments or questions that are there, there's a lot of questions on the renewables element. Some of it is like waste to energy. Senator Win already mentioned biomass and the like. But there was also little mention about geothermal and hydro, and whether there's also some support that can be provided in those very high capex types of areas. What are the views of well, I guess it depends on who wants to answer first. On those particular areas, different types of renewables, waste to energy, hydro, biomass, and the like. I do know that they do need to take some time to come on. That requires certain gestation, the like there. But some of them can actually come on very quickly. Yeah, things like waste to energy can come on very quickly. Yeah, any views about those? That there's certain segment of renewables.
Perhaps let me make the first response to that, Baste. From a distribution utility standpoint, we do encourage renewables to come in. We want to get more renewable energy supply. But of course, again, here's where the government policies become very important. We need the good policies in place and a good framework that the private sector can follow. The private sector has the capital to make the investments, right? But we need to see which way government wants us to turn or take. And that becomes very important when it comes to renewable energy. For instance, today, there is good law and good regulation that imposes the RPS on distribution utilities, right? But it's at a measly 1%. There have been talks about increasing that 1% to 2.5%, which would have been great, good already, but we could actually make it even higher. But there seems to be no action yet in terms of getting it to be finally increased. Why is it important for us? Because it will then allow us to fashion our supply strategy, right? Today, we're saying from a MERALCO standpoint, with a 1% RPS requirement, we will transform our entire mid-merit requirements to renewables. That's 29% roughly of what we contract to supply our captive market. So that's a great commitment on the part of MERALCO, on the part of any distribution utility. We want to make a higher commitment, but we are capped by the 1%. We don't want a situation where renewables have to, for instance, fight it out with other fuels and then bring down chaos in the competitive selection process. Renewables should be given their space to compete. Anyway, it's still competitive, so it will be open to all types of renewable supply sources, whether that's solar, ocean wind, floating solar, hydro, all of that stuff. They should be given a chance to compete for our supply requirements for the captive market, away from the fossil-based fuel supply. So that's something that I think we should really push ahead. And maybe it's something that the MAP can help the distribution utilities on, in terms of moving government to enact the necessary amendments to the regulations to increase at least the RPS to a more to a higher level of renewable supply. Thank you.
Jay, you raise your hand.
Yeah, Baste, just to support what RCE said, I fully agree that we should increase the RPS target. Of course, there's history behind the 1%.
Yeah.
At that time, I could not get a higher than 1% approval. And so we agreed, everybody in the industry, when we did the RPS, we agreed, let's take baby steps. We've taken that.
Yeah.
So now is the time to take the leap, especially since, as you know, FIT was at 9.68 and
Yep.
solar now is 350.
Yes.
I'm hearing between 3 to 350, and they're negotiating with RCE. It's coming too low. But that's one. Number two, definitely, I fully support the amendment to the CSP rules that you should give RE its own space. If Meralco wants to do wind, let them do wind. Anyway, we can cap the price. If Meralco wants to do solar, let them do solar. Even for geothermal, we all know geothermal is not as cheap as the other RE. But geothermal can always compete with the baseload price. So
Yes.
let's give geothermal that space as well. So allow that. I pushed for the amended CSP rules. They're on the table of the secretary. I hope they will be signed soon. And just to add to the comment of Senator Win earlier, when he said finally the DOE listened, after 6 years. Of course, it's not too late. Better late than never. And finally, there's a mention here of FIT.
Yeah.
Finally, the DOE is considering that as a second program under the JAP, the Green Energy Auction Program. But of course, it took them 6 years. Never mind. We saw that during the first FIT program, immediately 1,400 megawatts built under a 20-year FIT price. Now we can cap the FIT price at 350 as an example. And I'm pretty sure another 1,000 megawatts will build just like that. So let's start. We're not lacking any laws. No, we just need to implement them.
Great. Bill, over to you for the next question.
Thank you, Jay. This question comes from one of our audience, from John Forbes, and I think it's for Senator Win, but the other reactors may also put in their views. Foreign manufacturing investors always find industrial power rates in the Philippines considerably higher than Indonesia, our neighbors, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam, which is one reason these countries always attract a great deal of foreign direct investments. Now, as we grapple on increasing our employment, can anything be done done to levelize these rates for export industries only? For example, a zero VAT rating or other incentives, Senator Win.
Well, on the average, for manufacturing, electricity takes up probably about as high as 30 to probably as high as 40% of their total cost. It's very expensive, especially, for example, if you're in the service business like tourism or hotels, it can go up as high as even half of your direct cost. I believe that a way to lower down and to give commercial and industrial users a way to lower down their costs is through keep on lowering the ARCOA requirement, the retail competition open access requirement. If we can lower it down all the way to household level, then that will be the best case. No? But at least lower it down to a level wherein MSMEs can already use ARCOA and choose their own generators. That's a way for them to lower down electricity costs. Unfortunately, after EPIRA, we don't subsidize our electricity, just like Indonesia or Malaysia, which are oil-producing countries. But then again, we have a very vibrant generation sector. And if we can lower it down all the way to the MSMEs, where MSMEs can choose their own generation companies, that's a way to lower down their electricity costs. And that's what we are doing here in the Senate, to continue to push the lowering down of threshold all the way down to MSMEs level and then later on to household level.
Thank you, Senator Win. Back to you, Ernie.
You're on mute, Ernie. Ernie, you're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you, Bill, and Senator Win. Going through the questions, there was one question that was the very first one submitted, was that nobody mentioned nuclear power. I know that the Committee on Energy, we will be discussing this in one of our webinars, but maybe any of the Senator Win or the panelists would like to comment on nuclear. Senator Win, what are your thoughts on nuclear and or Meralco?
From what I have read and researched, nuclear power has three main issues. Number one is risk. Number two is cost overruns. And number three is waste. And these are the things that we need to address, especially going into legacy technology or legacy nuclear power technologies. I had the opportunity of going to Slovenia to look at a plant similar to ours. Actually, it's a twin plant. And to my surprise, the cost per kilowatt hour of that nuclear power plant is no less than a typical coal or a typical fossil fuel plant. And I asked the CEO, I remember I was very surprised, because I thought it will be half or even lower. And he answered something to the effect that because the safety requirements of the International Atomic Agency has gone up tremendously after Fukushima, that all these add-ons to promote safety has also pushed prices up. But then again, these plants are state-owned. They don't care if it's up or down. No? They're all state-owned. As long as they have power and they can subsidize it, that's fine. So my point there is, Ernie, let's not be too bullish on the pricing, no? Because the cost overruns plus the safety issues might not yield to the price that we have in mind. So sometimes we have to look at the entire picture to make sure that it's beneficial to us. But then again, I'm not discounting nuclear. I know that technology is evolving. And there are smaller nuclear power, much safer nuclear technologies, just like the ones Bill Gates is promoting. So I'm not discounting that, although that's a few years away, but those technologies are coming into play already.
Right. Ernie, if I can react, I do share the same viewpoint as Senator Win. We have to keep an open mind when it comes to nuclear. Obviously, being mindful though of the risk, the cost, and the disposal of waste. But in today's modern technology, and of course, 10 years from now, those would probably be more or less addressed in better ways than like 20 years ago or 30 years ago when nuclear was proliferating. But we have to make a distinction also between the conventional nuclear technology, those large, huge Bataan nuclear plant type of technologies, and the more modern ones, which they call the advanced small modular reactors, right? Bill Gates is one of the promoters. There are others. And those seem to address a lot of the safety issues because they are modular, they are more contained, they occupy less land or footprint. And the technology is such that the waste disposal of these particular types of technologies are nothing compared, the issues are nothing compared to or nowhere near the issues of the conventional plants. So a lot of advancement in nuclear technology that we should be mindful of, and we should watch that pan out in the next maybe 5 to 10 years, when these advanced small modular reactors probably would have reached the stage of proven technology. It's something that is worth examining for the Philippines, given its archipelagic, our geography. We don't want to see huge nuclear plants anymore, but we want modular plants that can be built and constructed on a regional basis, perhaps. And this obviously addresses this whole issue about climate change as we move away from fossil-based fuel into cleaner technology. So we should allow regional players in our generation of partners to also see how they can invest and develop nuclear technology in their respective regions. It's not something that should be confined only to Metro Manila or Luzon, really. And we have to be thankful for how nuclear technology has developed in the last 10 years, and it's going to be more developed in the next 10 years, actually. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. There's one question here about that, going on to the point about regional distributed type of energy. So coming from Clara Claudio, she says that we are a maritime and archipelagic nation with a lot of islands. So shouldn't we include the consideration of distributed energy systems rather than continue focusing on an integrated grid system throughout the country? Should we not, and implant within those particular areas key generation facilities where Anne and the team can focus on and putting the plants there, or maybe go more on renewables in particular area, but just having obviously some backups to ensure that we don't get into the duck curve issues and all those other things. Jay, you raise your hand.
Yeah, just to answer that, and again, I'll refer to another one of the bills of Senator Win. He's way ahead of everyone else. He anticipated that problem. The microgrid bill is another issue that, in fact, he wrote a bill on, and hopefully will be passed this year. That addresses the difficulty of the private sector to enter into these areas. And it's not only just for conventional fuel, In fact, in the RPS rules, we have the version for off-grid areas,
Yes.
where even NPC now has installed hybrid systems running on diesel and solar, and they're much cheaper than a full diesel system. So definitely, I support that comment, and it's been recognized by the DOE with its QTP rules, which now hopefully will be amended by the much easier microgrid bill of Senator Win.
Yeah, so let's pray that it gets passed soon.
Yeah, let me add, Ernie, that we fully support the microgrid bill that's being sponsored by Senator Win. It will actually be a game changer for the entire Philippines. It will bring out much needed investments in the generation, transmission, off-grid type of infrastructure, right? And even distribution groups like ourselves would be minded to invest, not just within our franchise area, but outside of our franchise area, to speed up the electrification of the entire country. It's a great piece of legislation. I do hope Senator Win can make a final push and have that approved within the year.
Ernie, are you going to do the hard questions on what's coming up in terms of potential brownouts and the like?
Yeah, there's a question here that's kind of sensitive. Actually, a series of 3 questions, I think, from our friend in the power industry. I think this is with respect to Senator Win. I know there is still the ongoing investigation of the Senate on the Camago Malampaya, and questions related to Camago Malampaya are really, there were 3 questions that were submitted. If you will allow me, I'll just read it. Senator Win, what is your view on the Camago Malampaya extension, given that there is a new operator? Related to that, with all the preparations and discussions this year, will there be a tight power supply? Do you project a tight power supply, not only in October, but moving forward also during elections of 2022, given that we cannot build any new major power plants within the next couple of months before election? Maybe Attorney Espinosa would also like to comment, particularly on the supply side from Meralco's point of view. Thank you, Senator.
I'll answer the first question, Ernie. I think Ray can answer the second question more accurately. On the first one, on Malampaya, the contract will end by 2024 and everything will revert back to the government, meaning us, the Filipino people will enjoy all the profits coming out of the revenues and profits coming out of Malampaya. Of course, on the other side of that, government will be operating the gas field. So this is a decision that government needs to make and analyze, because government by itself has a lot of constraints in terms of operation. But the basic principle here is if ever government decides to get another operator, it has to bid it out, because that's the only way, again, for us to get the best price, for us to get the best operator possible, and for us to get the best option. So my view here is after 2024, if government do decide to bid it, to look for an operator, a new operator, or whoever, or even the existing operator, they have to bid it out.
Thank you, Senator. On the issue of the supply for summer, Attorney Ray, from Meralco's point of view, for the coming 2022, considering that you can't build any new power plants, and we don't expect the transmission lines to be completed, given also these ECQs and so forth, in time for elections. Do you project a shortage in summer of 2022.
Or maybe dagdag ko lang doon, Attorney Ray, ano? Is there not the stuff that Meralco could do with ILPs and the like, if it could be sort of increased in a way, ano, para if there is a tight supply, then ILP can kick in?
Actually, Ernie, we have been, as you know, we've been in the forefront of the ILP program. I suppose also given our franchise area. But today we have actually signed up quite a significant amount of ILP already. But we require more, not simply from the franchise area of Meralco, but for the entire Luzon area. Because one thing that we have to understand is if there is a Luzon-wide shortage, it affects the Meralco franchise area, even if we are almost fully contracted, right? Because the rule here is if there is a supply shortage that affects the entire Luzon, all of the DUs and all of the electric cooperatives will have to share in that burden and then deload themselves. So for instance, if there's a shortfall of 1,000 megawatts Luzon-wide, all of that would have to be shared by the DUs and the ECs, right? And we, as Meralco, gets to deload the biggest. About 70% of that will be ours. So, which means we have to shed 700 megawatts of demand. And how do we respond to that? To minimize the rotating brownout, we go to our ILP program. Now, the success of the ILP program depends actually on the situation of each ILP member, right? Depends on whether they can operate during that particular day, whether their gensets can operate at full capacity and for the length of time. So there are a lot of conditions attached to each particular member of the ILP. So you don't get to maximize the gross ILP program that we have. So we're saying is that this should probably be implemented Luzon-wide. As many of our DU and EC family, if they could encourage their own ILPs, that would certainly help the Luzon-wide situation. In the case of Meralco, our contracting strategy is we contract about 90% of the supply requirements for a captive market, and then that's through bilateral contracts through the CSP program, and then roughly around 10% we buy from Western, and we've managed to provide ample supply within our franchise area. But when total Luzon is short, then regardless of how well contracted we are affected by that shortage. So the entire Luzon must work together to help minimize the impact of shortages.
Attorney Jay, thank you. Attorney Ray. Attorney Jay, you raised your hand.
Yes, Ernie, just to add to what RC already said, no? I recall looking back to sometime 2015, we were faced with this situation. No? And aside from ILP, what the DOE then implemented was this increase in fit of solar to 500 megawatts. No? And the rationale behind that is that we all know solar can get built in 6 months. No, so it's not too late. Between now, it's only August, no, and March when demand starts going up. There's a lot of time for all the utilities to start contracting, no, in the hope that they finish these solar plants, because anyway, it's peak summer months, no, when we expect demand to grow. There's enough time to add a little more capacity, at least for the summer months. But yes, I agree that we will have a problem next year, especially when we're back to normal activities.
Well, the other thing, maybe Jay, to add to your point and more to your question, Ernie, the government should also be responsive to this dips in supply, especially during the summer months, right? And sometimes you won't be able to contract fully for those dips during summer months. I mean, there's no way a DU can contract for that. If we contract, capacity for one whole year just to address these dips that happen in summer, it's going to be very expensive for the customers, right? Because they'll have to pay for 1 year's cost to address only 2 months of summer. So we tend to go where? We tend to go to the WESM, essentially to pick up that supply. But if WESM is not sufficient, if there is a supply shortage in WESM, we should be able to, and which is allowed by regulations of the DOE, to contract emergency power supply agreements, right? As long as it's less than 1 year, and then you go to the DOE and get approval. We tried to do that this summer because we were alerted already by NGCP. NGCP was all over the paper saying, look, guys, we may have red alerts in summer, so be ready. We were also forewarned by the ERC. So what we did was to negotiate an extension of a PSA with one of our suppliers and enter into an interim power supply agreement, which we submitted to the DOE for approval, and making the case that this is to address obviously supply issues during the summer months and possibly higher WESM prices given the tightness of supply. But we filed this in April ahead of the summer months, and unfortunately that was not acted upon by the DOE until in the last hearing of the Senate called by Senator Win. We were informed on air by Yusek Pentevella that our request would be denied because our request was in relation to WESM prices. But it's a combination of WESM prices and shortage, right? I mean, if there was no shortage of power supply, then we would go to WESM, and the prices would be reasonable. So it's a combination. So we were surprised it was denied, disapproved, and yet the DOE approved a similar request by APECO of in Albay. Same issue, address WESM, address summer shortage, 6 months. So now we have to write the DOE and seek reconsideration of their decision, and also try to gain an understanding what's different between our request and that of the request of ALECO and APECO. So those are instances where we need government support. I mean, we don't want to eschew from CSP, but there are just certain instances where we do need emerge to contract on an emergency basis to address a looming power shortage and also to avoid very high WESM prices. All actually of that redounds to the benefit of the consumer anyway. I mean, we don't earn from generation. Our business is distribution, right? So
it's very interesting to note, Attorney Ray. Finally, we have our lady panelist raised her hand. I was going to ask her a question afterwards. Anyway, go ahead, Attorney Ann.
Thank you, Ernie. No, in response to the question on shortages and the solutions, what's really important is to contract reserves and to contract, for the DUs to contract. Because one, ILP should not, I just like to clarify this, ILP should not be treated as a reserve. It should be our last resort. It should be something that saves us when nothing is there anymore. So if reserves are properly, contracted and the DUs properly contract, then eventually the system will correct itself and you will be able to have energy security. The reason why also, for example, that's why earlier I forgot to mention, we are also stressing importance on the CSP for AS, ancillary services. That's one thing that we have been talking about for a few months already, because reserves are really important to balance the system. We cannot, if we don't have reserves, then all our energy, it will eat up into the demand portion, or the energy that is dedicated for the demand portion. So that's why we have an imbalance right now. So we need to properly contract, and contracting gives right investment signals to generators. Since we have the right investment signals to generators, then because we have the contracts, we will be building more and we will be supplying more energy. Also, if there are a lot of players, again, as I've said, then it will have an effect on competition and better prices in the WSM. Obviously, it all depends on your risk profile. But if your WSM prices also, if there is no contract, if there are no contracts, and DUs always rely only on the WSM because it is controlled, okay, because of our secondary price cap, look at our merchant plants. Look at our peakers. They won't be able to survive because on the days that they run, then that means it's not even enough for them to be economically viable. So it's a very, very delicate balance between consumer protection and also investment promotion. So we need to find that sweet spot. But again, it all boils down to proper contracting, just to make sure that we have enough. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Ann. Are there any other questions? I think we still have a lot.
Attorney J raised his hand.
Oh, Attorney J, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Ernie. I just want to add to what our CEO already mentioned. I did this exercise after the Senate hearing of reviewing the PSPPs, the power procurement plans of the DUs, which are posted in the website, by the way, of the DOE. And because this issue of shortage in supply and contracting ancillary, seems to be a debate. But when I check the PSPPs, including Meralco, they can contract more. In other words, thanks to RE over time for the last 3 years, the contracting in WSM has gone up to about 16%. In other words, 84% of the DUs, that's the time they have PSAs, right? But 16% of the time, they just buy from WSM. The problem is if we don't have enough supply.
Correct.
That's why there is room for these DUs. Again, we can be very calculated and deliberate on this. Review every PSPP, look at where these DUs can still contract PSAs, so we won't be having these supply issue problems anymore. And one more point, and I've said this during the Senate hearing, the ancillary policy can never be used to address the supply deficiency issue. That's different. DUs can contract more under PSAs. Ancillary, there's always, just like what Annie said, there's a proper level of the ancillary supply that we can contract. But we have room for the DUs to get more PSA, so we won't have these supply issues.
Thank you, Attorney J. Just one last question. I think, Architect Palafox submitted this earlier, but I really don't, I'll just read it straightforward. 2030 challenge to address climate change, architecture, green buildings, green infrastructure, etc. Elsewhere in the world, there are tax incentives and tax refunds. Can our obsolete laws be reformed or inspired by these best practices? I think this is in relation to the issue of energy efficiency and so forth on the buildings. Related to that is our country needs 100 new cities by 2050. Can we incentivize large-scale developments to have district cooling and cogeneration? Thanks. I think this was addressed to Senator Win from Architect John Palafox. Thank you.
Ernie, I mentioned before that Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act, that law, it's a new law that DOE is currently implementing. It hasn't been fully implemented yet, but that's another way of demand management and a way to not put pressure on the supply side. So, like I said, generation save, a megawatt save, it's a megawatt produced. So we're pushing, again, we're urging and pushing DOE to make sure that they fully implement this law so that industries will benefit. New skills and talents will come into play. The energy managers and the other personalities that are needed to manage and to make your businesses efficient in terms of consumption of electricity.
Thank you, Senator Win. I think we're close to the meeting period. On that note, thank you, Honorable Senator Win, Attorney Espinosa, Attorney Jay, and Attorney Ann for joining us on this webinar and enlightening our members on the stability and energy security and dependability. At this point in time, President Gigi, before we adjourn, do you have any parting words?
Oh, well, thank you for an excellent presentation, Senator Win, your 7 steps, and then very good reactions from Attorney Ray, Attorney Jay, and Attorney Ann. No, very educative. What jumps out to me is that we have a supply problem, we have an ease of doing business problem, we have a choice of how to proceed on an orderly transition between the current fossil and the progressive RE. And but the best part is that all of you seem to be talking to each other and know each other well. So maybe you can help in fixing this situation, I would say, no. And then I guess we just have to be a little bit concerned about next year. But the good news is that all the principal players are talking. I also like what Senator GATCHALIAN said, that EPIRA's working because effectively the government doesn't spend for power generation, and it's really the private sector who has to figure out what else to do. No, so bottom line, thank you for spending so much time, not only trying to educate us but also to help us with the energy security situation in the Philippines.
Thank you, President Gigi. At this point in time, may we invite everybody, it's good your videos are still on, for a short photo ops.
Okay,
Arnold,
please,
just let us know.
Okay, be ready. 1, 2, 3. One more time, please. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Arnold. Thank you again, Honorable Senator GATCHALIAN, Attorney Espinosa, Attorney Jay, and Attorney Ann for joining us and sharing your time and expertise with us today. Thank you, everyone, and stay safe and healthy. We will see you on our next GMM on August 25 on addressing the country's hunger problem, and on September 7 for the annual Joint General Membership meeting on leapfrogging digital talent development. This MAP General Membership meeting is now adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, gents. It was a great opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Win.
Thank you, Senator Win.
Senator Win.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Senator Win. Thank you to
Salamat.
my co-moderators.
Thank you.
Ernie, good job.
Excellent job.
We followed the leader.
Arnold, you followed the script. Thank you, Gigi. Thank you. Stay safe,
Okay.
everyone.
Told you
Stay
you'd
safe.
all do a good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay,
everyone.
everybody keep safe.
Stay safe.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye.